The Volanthi Empire stretched across 17 star systems, and Queen Cerethis ruled every single one from her throne made of crystallized starlight. She had lived for 900 cycles and had seen empires rise and fall like waves upon a shore. And through it all, she had kept her people strong and proud and feared. Her daughter, Princess Evelith, was only 14 cycles old, which was like 8 years for a human child. And she was the most precious thing in all the empire. The princess had 4 graceful arms like willow branches swaying in wind, and her skin glowed with soft bioluminescent light that changed colors with her feelings. And her eyes held the deep violet color of distant nebulae. She was small and curious and always asking questions that made her tutors tired when the conquered world called Earth sent its tribute that year. The queen sat upon her throne and watched the offerings arrive. There were metals and minerals and strange foods and pieces of art. And then there was something different as a single human male walked forward among the treasures. His hands bound, his head held high despite his chains. His name was Marcus Cole, and he was 32 years old, and he had been a soldier on Earth before the Volanthi came. The queen looked at him with mild interest, the way one might look at an unusual insect. He was so strange by Volanthi standards, with only 2 arms instead of 4, and skin that was dull brown and did not glow at all, and eyes that were simple and dark without any trace of starlight in them. He was short and compact and moved with a careful awareness that suggested he knew how to fight. What is this creature meant to be? The queen asked the tribute master, a guardian. Your Majesty, the tribute master replied with a low bow. The humans offer him as a protector for your household, as is their custom when they wish to show loyalty to a new ruler. The queen laughed, and her laugh sounded like crystal chimes breaking. A protector, she said with amusement. This small, soft thing with its brief little life. What could it possibly protect? But she was in a generous mood that day, and she decided to accept the gift rather than send it back as an insult. Give him to my daughter, she said with a wave of her 4 hands. Let him be a novelty for her, something amusing to look at. Perhaps he can teach her about the strange creatures that live on lesser worlds. And so Marcus Cole was brought to the chambers of Princess Evelith, and he was given simple quarters near her door, and he was told that his duty was to stand guard through the night while she slept. The other servants thought it was a joke. The Volanthi guards who protected the royal family were 8 feet tall and had 4 powerful arms and could see in perfect darkness and live for 1,000 cycles. What could one small human do that they could not do better? But Marcus did not complain and did not ask questions. He simply took his position outside the princess's door when night fell, and he stood there without moving, watching the shadows with his dull human eyes. The princess noticed him on the first night. She was supposed to be sleeping, but she was curious about everything. And this new creature was the most interesting thing she had seen in months. She crept out of her bed and moved silently to her door and peeked through the crack to look at him. He stood very still in the darkness, and even though Volanthi eyes could see perfectly in the dark, she could tell that he could not see as well as she could yet. He stood there anyway, alert and watchful, as if the darkness did not frighten him at all. She opened the door slowly, and he turned to look at her immediately, his body shifting into a ready position before he recognized who she was. Your Highness, he said, and his voice was deeper than she expected. You should be sleeping. I wanted to see you, she said, and her skin glowed a soft, curious blue. You are very strange. Yes, Your Highness, you do not glow. No, Your Highness. Can you see in the dark like we can? No, Your Highness, but I can see well enough. She stepped closer to him, studying his face with her large violet eyes. He did not step back or show fear, even though she was royalty and could have him killed with a single word. Are you afraid of the dark? she asked. Marcus knelt down slowly so that his eyes were level with hers. And this surprised her because no one ever made themselves lower than a princess. "No," he said. And there was something in his voice that she did not understand yet. Something solid and certain. "The dark is where I do my best work." She tilted her head, and her skin flickered with confusion. "What does that mean?" "It means that when the lights go out and everyone else is sleeping and the shadows grow deep, that is when I am most awake. That is when I watch and wait and keep the things I protect safe." "What things do you protect?" He looked at her for a long moment, and something in his dark human eyes seemed to make a decision. "You, Your Highness, from this night forward, I protect you." She laughed, and her laugh was like tiny bells ringing. "You are so small," she said. "The Volanthi guards are much bigger and stronger than you." "Yes, they are. Then how can you protect me better than they can?" Marcus stood back up and returned to his position by the door. "Because they guard you, because they are ordered to," he said. "I will guard you because I choose to, and that is a different thing entirely." The princess did not understand what he meant, but she found that she liked this strange creature with his serious voice and his steady eyes. She went back to bed. But before she closed her door, she looked at him one more time. "What is your name?" she asked. "Marcus." "Your Highness." "Good night, Marcus." "Good night, Princess." She slept well that night, better than she had slept in a long time, and when she woke in the morning, she found that Marcus was still standing at his post, as if he had not moved at all through the long dark hours. She did not know it then, but her life had just changed forever. The small strange human with no glow and no starlight in his eyes would become the most important person in her world, and she would spend the rest of her very long life trying to understand why. The cycles passed like water flowing through open hands, and Marcus Cole grew older while Princess Evelith grew up. 10 cycles went by, then 20, then 30, and through all those years, the human remained at his post outside her door every single night without fail. The other servants of the palace came and went, rotating through their positions as was normal for Volanthi workers. But Marcus stayed. He became a fixed point in the princess's life, as constant as the stars themselves in those years. He taught her many things. He taught her a game called chess, which used small carved pieces on a board of black and white squares, and the goal was to trap the enemy king. She found it barbaric at first, a game built entirely around war and destruction, but then she found it fascinating. And soon she was beating him more often than he beat her, taught her card tricks that made her laugh and clap all 4 of her hands with delight. And he told her stories about Earth, about a world with blue oceans and green forests and only one yellow sun in the sky. "It sounds very lonely," she said once. "Only one sun. It was home," Marcus replied. And there was a sadness in his voice that she was learning to recognize. Everything you love becomes beautiful, even if others think it is plain. He learned her language until he spoke it better than most courtiers in the palace, with proper grammar and subtle meanings, and even the poetic forms that Volanthi used for formal occasions. He memorized her fears, her habits, the way she twisted her lower right hand when she was nervous, the particular shade of amber her skin turned when she had nightmares. He knew when she needed company and when she needed silence, and he always seemed to know which one before she did. The queen watched all of this with distant amusement. "The human is still alive," she said to her advisors sometimes. "How surprising. I thought his kind died after 40 or 50 cycles at most. He is quite healthy for his species." "Your Majesty," her advisors would reply, "perhaps he will last another 20 cycles if he is lucky." "How brief," the queen would say. And then she would forget about him entirely until someone mentioned him again. But the princess never forgot about him. Not for a single day in her 20th cycle. Something terrible happened. The Keth hegemony was an enemy of the Volanthi Empire. a collection of shadow-dwelling creatures who hated the light and envied the Valanti's power. They sent assassins to the palace, 3 of them. Slipping through the defenses like smoke through cracks in a wall, the Valanti guards were supposed to be the finest warriors in 17 star systems. But that night, they failed. The assassins moved through the palace corridors with poisoned darts and curved blades. Heading straight for the princess's chambers, they knew exactly where to go. As if someone had told them the way. Marcus heard them coming. He did not have Valanti ears that could hear a whisper from 100 feet away. But he had learned to listen for the sounds that did not belong. The small wrongnesses that meant danger. He heard the soft whistle of a dart flying through the air. And he moved. The first assassin died before it knew Marcus was there. A blade hidden in his boot driven up through the soft place beneath its chin. The second assassin turned and fired a dart at the princess's door, and Marcus threw himself in front of it, taking the dart in his shoulder instead of letting it reach her room. The third assassin was fast and skilled, but Marcus was desperate. And desperation made humans dangerous in ways that other species could not understand. He killed it with his bare hands, choking the life out of it while the poison from the dart spread through his blood. When the Valanti guards finally arrived, they found Marcus on the floor surrounded by 3 dead assassins. The prince is kneeling beside him and screaming for help. The Valanti physicians came and looked at the dart and shook their heads. The poison is Keth shadow venom, they said. No creature can survive it once it enters the blood. We are sorry, princess, but your human will be dead by morning. The princess refused to leave his side. She sat beside his bed and held his hand with all 4 of her hands. And she watched his face as he burned with fever and trembled with convulsions. You cannot die, she whispered to him. I forbid it. I am a princess, and I forbid you to die. But Marcus could not hear her, and his breathing grew weaker, and his skin turned gray. 9 days passed, 9 days of the princess refusing to eat, refusing to sleep, refusing to leave the small room where Marcus lay dying. The physician said it was impossible for him to still be alive, that the poison should have killed him in hours. But somehow his heart kept beating on the 9th day. Marcus opened his eyes. The princess was asleep in a chair beside his bed, her skin pale with exhaustion, her 4 hands still wrapped around his one. He looked at her for a long moment, and then he squeezed her fingers gently. She woke instantly, and when she saw his eyes open, she made a sound that was half laugh and half sob. You almost died, she said, and her voice was shaking. Almost, he agreed, and his voice was rough and weak, but not quite. Why? She demanded, and there were tears running down her face, making her bioluminescent skin shimmer. Why would you do that for me? Why would you throw yourself in front of a poisoned dart for me? Marcus considered the question for a long time, because he knew it deserved a serious answer. Because, Your Highness, he said finally, that is what humans do. We choose our people, and then we do not let go, not ever, not for anything. I do not understand. You will, he said, and he smiled at her, a tired smile but a real one. Someday you will understand, and when you do, you will know why I stayed. She did not understand that day, but she held his hand tighter, and she knew that something had changed between them. He was not just her guardian anymore. He was her human, and she was never going to let anyone take him away from her. Princess Yvelith came of age in her 40th cycle, which meant she was now considered an adult by Valanti standards and could take her place in the matters of the empire. The queen summoned her to the great throne room to discuss the things that adult princesses needed to discuss. Things like succession and marriage, and the way to ruling 17 star system. Yvelith walked into the throne room with her head held high and her skin glowing a calm, steady silver that showed she was not afraid. She had grown into a beautiful woman by Valanti standards, tall and graceful with 4 elegant arms and eyes that held depths of wisdom beyond her years. Marcus was not allowed to come with her into the throne room. He waited outside the great doors, as he always did when she had official business, standing at attention, even though his hair had turned gray at the temples and lines had appeared around his eyes. He was 58 years old now, ancient by human standards for someone who had lived such a hard life. The queen sat upon her throne of crystallized starlight and looked at her daughter with eyes that had seen 900 cycles of history. "You have grown well," the queen said, and there was approval in her voice. "You are ready to take on greater responsibilities." "Thank you, mother. But first we must discuss your protection." The queen continued. "The Keth hegemony grows bold. They test our borders and whisper threats in the dark spaces between stars. You will need proper guards now that you are a woman of the court." "I have a guard, mother." The queen's laugh was like breaking glass, sharp and cold and dismissive. "The human," she said, and the word dripped with amusement. "Surely you do not mean the human. His name is Marcus. He is old now. Daughter, his kind wither like cut flowers. He has perhaps 10 more cycles, if fortune favors him. Probably less. Then I will have him for 10 more cycles." The queen leaned forward on her throne, and her bioluminescent skin flickered with irritation. "He cannot protect you anymore. He is soft and slow and mortal. I have seen him walk through the palace. He limps when he thinks no one is watching. His hands shake when he holds a weapon for too long. He has never failed me. He will fail you," the queen said firmly. "It is the nature of his kind. They burn bright for a moment, and then they are gone. You cannot build your safety on such a fragile foundation. I will assign you a cohort of Volanti warriors, the finest in 17 star systems. They will keep you safe for centuries." The princess stood very still, and her skin began to glow brighter, shifting from calm silver to a fierce, burning gold. "Your Volanti warriors," she said, and her voice was quiet but intense. "Were they the ones who stopped the Keth assassins 20 cycles ago?" The queen's expression flickered. That was a failure of intelligence. "Not of the guards themselves. They ran," the princess said. "When the assassins came, your finest warriors ran and hid and waited for the danger to pass. I know because I checked the records. I know because I asked questions. I know because Marcus almost died while your guards were cowering in safe rooms. The human got lucky. Lucky." The princess repeated, and now her skin was blazing with golden light. "He took a poison dart that was meant for my heart. He killed 3 assassins with a blade in his bare hands while that poison was spreading through his blood. He spent 9 days dying, and he refused to die because he had promised to protect me." The queen shifted on her throne, uncomfortable with the direction this conversation had taken. One act of bravery does not make him a suitable protector for a princess of the empire. "It was not one act," Avella said, and she stepped closer to the throne. "It was 26 years of acts. 26 years of standing at my door every single night. 26 years of learning our language and our customs and our poetry, not because he was ordered to, but because I am his duty and his joy. You speak as if he loves you. He does love me, and I love him, not the way you are thinking, not like a mate or a partner, but like something deeper, something I do not have words for because Volanti do not have this kind of bond." The queen studied her daughter with ancient eyes. "What kind of bond?" "He chose me," the princess said. "When I was nothing but a child and a burden and a novelty that your court laughed at him for protecting. He chose me. He decided that I was his to keep safe. And he has never wavered, not once, not ever. That is his job." "No," Avella said firmly. "His job was to stand at a door. Any door. Any princess would have been the same to a servant doing his job. But Marcus knows my fears. He knows my dreams. He knows the sound I make when I am pretending to be brave, but I am actually terrified. He knows me, mother, and he stays anyway." The queen was silent for a long moment. "He will die," she said finally, "soon by our standards. He will be gone, and you will have to find another. Then I will grieve him. and I will honor him, and I will never forget what he taught me about loyalty. What did he teach you? That protecting someone is not about being the strongest, or the fastest, or the one who lives the longest. It is about choosing to stand between them and harm every single day, even when it costs you everything. The queen leaned back on her throne and looked at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. "Who guards you through the night?" she asked, and her voice was softer now, curious instead of dismissive. The princess met her mother's ancient gaze without flinching, and her skin glowed with the steady golden light of absolute certainty. "My human." The queen was silent for a very long time, then she nodded slowly. "Very well," she said. "Keep your human, but when he is gone, you must accept proper guards." "When he is gone," the princess agreed. "But not before. Not while he still draws breath. Not while he still chooses me." She turned and walked out of the throne room, and Marcus was waiting for her outside the great doors, standing at attention despite his aching joints and his gray hair. "How did it go?" he asked. She took his hand in two of hers and squeezed gently. "She understands now," she said. "Or at least, she is beginning to understands what?" The princess smiled at him, and her smile was full of warmth and gratitude, and something that looked very much like the fierce love that humans called family. "Why, I will never let you go." The Keth hegemony declared war in the princess's 45th cycle, and the darkness came for the Volanthi Empire like a wave of shadow sweeping across the stars. Their shadow ships filled the skies above the Volanthi homeworld, blocking out the light of the twin suns and turning day into endless night. The palace came under siege, surrounded by Keth forces who hated the Volanthi and everything they stood for. Marcus was 63 years old now, ancient for a human who had lived the kind of life he had lived. His hair had gone completely silver, and his joints ached in the cold. And he moved slower than he once had. The palace physicians had told him years ago that he should rest, that his body was wearing out, that he had earned the right to sit in a comfortable chair and let younger beings do the protecting. But Marcus did not know how to rest. He had spent his entire adult life standing between the princess and harm, and he was not going to stop now just because his knees hurt and his back was stiff when the siege began. The princess wanted him to stay with her in the secure chambers deep in the heart of the palace. "You are not young anymore," she said, and her skin flickered with worry. "Let the Volanthi guards handle the fighting." "Your Highness," Marcus said, and he smiled at her with the same steady smile he had given her for 30 years. "When have the Volanthi guards ever handled anything as well as I have?" She could not argue with that. The siege went on for weeks, and the Keth probed the palace defenses looking for weaknesses. Marcus spent his time walking the corridors, checking the guard posts, talking to the soldiers and servants, and learning everything he could about the layout of the palace and its hidden passages. He had lived in this palace for 30 years, but he realized now that he had never truly studied it the way a soldier should study a battlefield. He corrected that mistake. He mapped every corridor, every stairwell, every hidden doorway and secret passage that the Volanthi had built into the ancient structure. He set traps in the places where an enemy might try to sneak through. Simple traps that used the things he found around the palace: tripwires and falling objects, and narrow choke points where a single defender could hold off many attackers. The Volanthi guards watched him work with a mixture of confusion and respect. "The human is preparing for something," they said to each other. "But what does he know that we do not?" Marcus knew something very important. He knew that the Keth had found the assassin's path 25 years ago, and that meant they had someone inside the palace who was helping theme a traitor. He did not know who the traitor was, but he knew that they would strike again, and when they did, they would use the hidden passages that only a few people in the palace knew about. So Marcus waited in the darkness, watching the passages that no one was supposed to know about, and he prepared for the attack that he knew was coming. It came on the 37th night of the siege. Marcus was hiding in a small alcove near one of the oldest passages in the palace when he heard them coming Keth infiltrators, moving through the darkness with the silent grace of creatures who were born in shadow. There were 6 of them, and they knew exactly where they were going, which confirmed what Marcus had suspected. Someone had told them the way Marcus was 63 years old, and his body was not what it used to be, but his mind was sharp. And he had spent weeks preparing for this moment. The first Keth stepped on a tripwire and triggered a cascade of heavy stones that fell from the ceiling and crushed it against the floor. The second Keth turned toward the sound and walked straight into a blade that Marcus had wedged into a crack in the wall at exactly the right height. Third and fourth Keth tried to rush forward together, but the passage was narrow, and Marcus had chosen this spot precisely because only one attacker could face him at a time. He did not fight like a young man. He fought like a human, which meant he fought dirty and clever, and without any sense of honor or fair play. He used the walls to brace himself. He used the low ceiling to limit his enemy's movements. He used every trick he had learned in 40 years of protecting someone he loved. The third Keth died with a knife in its throat. The fourth Keth died when Marcus collapsed a section of old stonework on top of it. The fifth Keth was faster and more skilled than the others, and it managed to cut Marcus across his side with a curved blade before he could stop it. But Marcus had been cut before, many times, and he knew how to keep fighting through the pain. He grabbed the Keth by its thin neck and slammed its head against the stone wall until it stopped moving. The sixth Keth tried to run Marcus, caught it in 3 steps, which surprised them both, and he killed it with a blade he had taken from one of the fallen. Then he sat down heavily against the wall, pressing his hand to the wound in his side, and he waited for help to arrive. The princess found him there an hour later, surrounded by 6 Keth bodies, his blood pooling on the ancient stones. "Marcus," she cried, and she ran to him and pressed all 4 of her hands against his wound. "Why did you not call for help? Why did you fight them alone?" "No time," he said, and his voice was weak but steady. They knew the passages. Someone told them. Someone close to the throne. Her skin went pale with horror. "A traitor." "Find them," Marcus said, and despite the pain and the blood loss, his eyes were fierce with determination. "I did not survive this long to let you die because of politics. Do not worry about that now. We need to get you to the physicians. Promise me," he said, and he grabbed her hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you will find the traitor and stop them." She looked into his eyes, those dull human eyes that had watched over her for 30 years, and she saw the same dedication that had always been there, the same absolute commitment to her safety. "I promise," she said. "Good," he said. And then he let himself relax, and the physicians came and carried him away. He survived, because that was what Marcus did. He survived when no one expected him to survive, because giving up was not something humans knew how to do. But as he lay in his bed recovering, he knew that the hardest fight was still to come. The traitor was still out there, and sooner or later they would make another move. When they did, Marcus intended to be ready. 7 cycles passed after the night. Marcus killed 6 Keth infiltrators in the hidden passages of the palace. The war with the Keth hegemony ended in a Volante victory. But the peace was fragile, and shadows still lurked in the corners of the empire. Marcus was 72 years old now, and even he had to admit that his fighting days were over. His hands trembled when he tried to hold a blade. His legs could not carry him quickly anymore, and his eyes were not as sharp as they once were. The princess, now 52 cycles old and serving as the heir apparent to the throne, had finally convinced him to retire from active duty. He spent his days in a comfortable room near her chambers, and he spent his nights sleeping in a real bed instead of standing guard at her door. But he never stopped watching over her. He had taught her well over the years, and she had become a formidable woman in her own right, skilled in politics and strategy and the art of finding enemies before they could strike. She had never stopped looking for the traitor who had helped the Keth. And finally, after 7 cycles of careful investigation, she had found them. Lord Varanthos was the queen's cousin, a high-ranking noble who had served on the royal council for 300 cycles. He had grown bitter over the centuries, passed over for honors he believed he deserved, watching others rise while he stayed in the same position. The Keth had approached him with promises of power, and he had sold his loyalty to them for a throne he would never have earned on his own. Princes exposed him before the entire court, presenting evidence that could not be denied. Witnesses who had seen him meeting with Keth agents, documents that proved his treachery. The court watched in horrified silence as the truth came out. Lord Varanthos stood in the center of the great throne room, surrounded by guards, his skin flickering with rage and humiliation. The queen sat upon her throne, her face cold with fury at her cousin's betrayal. The princess stood before the court, her voice steady as she read the final charges against the traitor. Marcus was in the gallery above the throne room, watching from a seat that had been reserved for him as an honored guest of the royal family. He was too old to stand for long periods anymore, and the princess had insisted that he watch from comfort rather than strain himself. He should have known that something was wrong. Lord Varanthos had been a schemer for 300 cycles, and a schemer like that would not go down without one final desperate act. When the princess finished reading the charges, Varanthos moved. He pulled a blade from somewhere inside his robes, a thin, sharp thing that had somehow escaped the guard's search, and he lunged toward the princess with murder in his eyes. The Valanthi guards were fast, but they were standing in the wrong positions, too far away to reach her in time. The queen screamed her daughter's name, and Marcus Cole, 72 years old, retired, his body broken by decades of service, threw himself over the gallery railing and dropped 15 feet to the throne room floor. He landed hard, and something in his leg snapped, but he did not stop. He threw himself between the princess and the blade, and the thin, sharp weapon meant for her heart went into his chest instead. Varanthos stared in shock at the old human who had appeared from nowhere. The guard seized him a moment later, but Marcus did not see either was falling, and the princess was catching him, lowering him gently to the floor with all 4 of her hands. "No," she whispered, and her voice was breaking. No, Marcus looked up at her face, at the face he had watched over for 40 years, and he smiled. It was the same smile he had given her when she was a frightened child peeking through her bedroom door, the same smile he had given her when she was a young woman demanding to know why he had risked his life for her. "Worth it," he managed to say, and blood bubbled at his lips. "You cannot do this," she said, and tears were streaming down her face, making her bioluminescent skin shimmer like starlight. "You cannot leave me. You promised. You said humans do not let go." "We do not," Marcus said, and his voice was getting weaker. "Not ever. Not even when we are gone." "What does that mean? I do not understand." "Please, Marcus. Please stay." He reached up with a trembling hand and touched her face, wiping away one of her tears. "It means that I will always be with you," he said. "Every time you stand between someone and harm, every time you choose to protect instead of run, every time you love someone so much that you would die for them, I will be there. That is not enough. I want you here. I want you standing at my door. I want more time. You have had 40 years of my time," Marcus said, and his smile was gentle. "That is more than most humans ever get to give. I am grateful for every single day. I am not ready to say goodbye." "You do not have to say goodbye," he said. "You just have to remember what I taught you. Remember what it means to choose someone and never let go." His eyes were closing, and his hand was falling away from her face, and the princess held him tighter, as if she could keep him alive through sheer force of will. "I love you," she said. "You strange, stubborn, wonderful human, I love you." "I know," Marcus whispered. "I have always known, and then he was gone. The court was silent. Queen Cerithis descended from her throne and walked slowly to where her daughter knelt on the floor, cradling the body of a small, fragile human who had given everything he had for her. "I understand now," the queen said softly. "Why you kept him." "He kept me," the princess said, and her voice was thick with grief. "He chose me when I was nothing but a child and a burden. He chose me every single day for 40 years. Do you know how rare that is? Do you know what it means to be chosen?" The queen had no answer when Princess Evelith took the throne 300 cycles later. She established the Order of Human Guardians from that day forward. Every royal child in the Volanti Empire would be assigned a human protector from birth, a guardian who would choose them and love them and stand between them and harm for as long as their brief, bright lives allowed. The galaxy thought it was strange that the greatest empire in known space would trust its heirs to such short-lived, fragile creatures, but the Volanthe knew the truth. Humans burned brief and bright, and in that burning, they loved with a ferocity that immortal races could never match. They chose their people, and they never let go, not ever. In the great hall of the palace, a statue stood beside the throne for 10,000 cycles, a human man, kneeling, one hand over his heart, looking up with steady eyes that held no starlight but somehow still managed to shine. The inscription at the base read simply, "He guarded her through every night, and in the end, that was enough. That was everything."